All right, guys, welcome to another episode on the Enlightened Path where we journey into the deeper layers of who we are. So, as you guys know, half of you here already know who I am. I'm your host, Hadassah, and today we are talking about something that we all have thought about, but a few of us fully really understand the ego. We've heard the term the ego before, and right off the bat, we tend to associate it with something bad. But today, I'm not going to be walking this path alone. Yes, I have a guest. With me is Michael, someone whose story and insights will open your minds as well as your heart. So let me just tell you a little bit. Michael is not big about putting himself out there. So let me tell you a little bit about who he is. So Michael Griffith, he is a psychotherapist and award-winning visual artist. Yes, you heard that right. With a passion for improving the human experience. This is why we're here. Let me tell you a little backstory about where I met Michael. I was invited by a friend, Samantha, to meditation in the park. And you know that you guys know that's my jam, meditation. Anything of that sort, I'm going to come. And it was really so inspiring to see what he wanted to achieve. I saw his vision, and ever since then I fell in love with what he wanted to do and the consistency in which he tried to put himself out there. There was another occasion, it was raining, and he still tried to pull it off because he knows the importance of meditation and the benefits for the human mind. That's not all there is to him. He's also the proprietor behind Oxygen Arts Guyana. You can go look for him on he's also on TikTok. You can type in Michael Griffith. You can find him on TikTok. But you can find this page on Facebook. So you can go look for him, which is a business centered on art and well-being. So his mandate primarily is about improving the human experience, like I said, and through intentional expression. We have to be intentional about who we are, where we're going, who we want to become, and be present in our daily life. Now, as a visual artist, Michael Griffith has been practicing art professionally in Guyana for almost 15 years. I know many of you may already know him, but for those who don't know him as yet, 15 years of artistry, and he's proficient in both traditional as well as digital mediums. His versatility spans over hyper-realistic portraits, caricatures, book illustrations, as well as concepts and commercial art. So if anything of this particular nature interests you, you can reach out to Michael. I'm going to give you the handles at the end of the show. Now, as a mental health professional as well, I'm not finished. His approach to psychotherapy includes the amalgamation of spiritual, religion, and psychological principles and practices to better serve the multifaceted landscape of Guyana. So based on what he does, he ensures that whatever you're coming with, whatever background, he is fully equipped to deal with any issue that you may have. And like myself, Michael is also a hypnotherapist. That is also something that we have connected on as well. So guys, please help me to welcome Michael. Michael, I know I spoke a lot about you. Welcome to the Enlightened Path. How are you doing today?
I was saying good evening, morning, and noon to your viewers and fans, since I'm not sure when exactly it will be released.
It's dark outside, as you can see. I'm all hooded up. It's cold as well. It's really cold. So, Michael, I'm so happy to have you here, and I feel like your expertise on the topic of the ego will help us to clarify. Because even I myself, I'm not too clear. Sometimes I think it's good, and sometimes I think it's bad. Like ever since growing up, we hear, oh, you have a big ego, and it kind of. But then later on in life, I heard that the ego, helps to protect you. It helps to set clear boundaries, and it's essential for this human experience. So, for you, what do you personally define the ego as?
For me, simply put, the ego is perception of self. So it's how we come to know and understand ourselves. But it's hard to have the conversation of ego without understanding duality. And duality plays a part in ego. And there's the positive aspects of the ego and there's the negative aspects of the ego. So the how I like to frame the negative aspects of the ego is anything that prevents you or compromises your path to your higher self.
Yes.
But this begins the conversation of what exactly we define the higher self as. So for different persons, it might be the definition might be a bit different, but whatever the definition is, the ego is that part of yourself that prevents you or compromises that path to there.
Yeah.
Simply put.
Oh, that is so interesting. That is so, I really like that definition because I also believe that when you think of the ego, it's in competition with your higher self. Like so, like if I have a thought or if I make a comment and I'm not sure, like where it stands, I say, where is this coming from? Is it coming from my ego or is it coming from my higher self? So I really, really like that. Now, just to put a little some more perspective on what you just said, can you share a time when your ego got in the way of your personal growth, where when it was competing with your higher self?
Where
A story.
countless, countless times. Let me see. One of the most recent. Okay, so I came across a bit of insight that I can't remember where it was, but I came across a bit of insight that has stayed with me ever since. It essentially said it's hard to you either want to influence or you want to be recognized. And
Ah, I love that.
a lot of times you can't have both. So a lot of times so an example of someone who understands the importance of the ability to influence would be Vice President Barjatio. He understands the importance of influence as opposed to the importance of being recognized. So when you
Yeah.
understand the importance of influence and recognize, you have to choose hard. And I have to decide whether this action is rooted in my need to be recognized or my need to influence. And I think this is a prime example of where the duality with the ego. Because what
Mm,
I found is that in several instances, whether it's with friends or with clients, there might be a moment where you can point out that, oh, this is something that I might have warned you about, or something that I might have saw coming and made reference to, or something to
mm,
the extent. But you can, if you look deeper, you realize that it's rooted in the need to be recognized. But doing that also jeopardizes your ability to reach the person in a meaningful way. So you have to decide, all right, do I want to be recognized as the person that warned them or the smart person, or do I want to take advantage of the opportunity to reach them to help them along the path? Because people have the tendency to become resistant if they feel, oh, or you're trying to one up me, or or I might feel inadequate as a result of a comment you made. So I think for me, that's a good example of the ego and it coming into conflict with your higher self and what you want to accomplish.
yeah, that's so important. And that's like a basic question you can ask. Do I want to be right and recognized or do I want to influence? And if you ask somebody that right, I'm just thinking, if you ask somebody that right off the bat, they're going to say, I want to influence. Like there is that aspect of themselves that knows that they would want to influence. But because the ego is so hidden, it's so deep rooted in the programming, you're not realizing, right?
Mhm.
You're not realizing, yeah.
I find it's one of the most common blocks to communication that I've encountered.
Yep.
A lot of time we need to hold on to the fact that hey, I was right or I am right, as opposed to even in relationships, as opposed to art. How does me being right serve this relationship or serve
Yeah.
this bit of communication?
Yeah, that's so. And I mean, it comes down to like, you know what I'm saying? I just ask. It's so easy, but yet sometimes when we're in character, we don't, we don't really realize. So a lot of times, right? When I was younger and I was growing up, I've always heard about, like I keep mentioning, you might see somebody and you might say they have a big ego, and in my in workplaces, I've seen people who persons claim that they have a big ego, but to me that was just that person being confident, like, you know, they had this self-confidence where they're able to speak openly, and in my opinion it wasn't the ego, but others thought like, oh, he got a big ego. But what do you say to that? How do you know the difference between the two? Kind of confusing to me.
Um, for different people, it could be difficult to navigate, but as I mentioned, understanding your higher self.
Yeah.
This includes having a direction, like which direction I'm going. So understanding your higher self, part of it is having a direction for your life in general.
Yeah.
So a person that might come off confident, cocky, it might be hard for some it might be hard for someone looking in to recognize or identify what is the direction that this person is going in. So it's only up to the individual themselves to understand or at least determine if am I doing this here based on my my trajectory, my efforts to move closer to the direction that I have um, outlined or identified to myself, or am I doing this to, or will this cause conflict? Will this either set me back a few steps? And we're not just the self as in the person. We are an extension of the people around us. Because if you work in an environment where nobody don't like you, you're not moving in the direction. Because it's only time till somebody sabotages. So understanding your higher self, understanding the direction, you also begin to incorporate those around you, whether it's your family, whether it's your friend, and the role that they play in your life. So
Mm.
this expansion of self, you can see it as art. This person is my hand, this person is my foot, and the same way I would take care of my physical hand and foot, or be aware of this person's feeling, or how they would react to me saying something. The same way I needed to be aware of that of the persons in the environment,
Yeah.
because they become an extension of yourself. If your goal is to achieve your higher self and move toward it, a complete disregard for the people around us would be counterproductive. While it is important to have a healthy sense of self and self confidence, there's a part where there's a line, I guess, where you can go too far. So it's up to the individual to determine, all right, am I mashing people's toes around me and creating a potential um, chaotic or toxic environment,
Yeah.
one which I will inevitably suffer in,
Mm.
or am I enabling or empowering the persons around me and encouraging them, setting an example so that they too can feel encouraged by my persona, my sense of self, and how I carry myself. So we need to be aware of all of that in execution of the ego, the execution of self.
I really, I really, really like what you just said. You still, even though it may be self confidence, you still, you're working around people, and it goes back to what you said about influencing. It comes back to how are you influencing people if they have a perspective of you that you have a big ego. It's challenging because it would be difficult for the message to get across. What do you think about that? Are we saying the same thing?
Definitely, definitely. If if the objective is to influence, and we don't get there alone. Nobody gets there alone. You could be the most smart person, you could be the most well educated, you could be the richest person, and nobody likes you, then you will find yourself as a rich, lonely person. You will find yourself as a hated person. And if we choose to deny the power of social consequences, it's hard to deny that what you call the cancel culture is real. So many people act accordingly because there's a social consequence. That shows just how important the or just how important being accepted socially is to our mental health,
Yes.
and how far we've come in terms of our evolution to incorporate that as an important part of or an important aspect of self.
Mm. I want to touch on something that you just said. You talk about the nuances of social interaction and how it's important to our mental health. Um, and I'm thinking about the ego, wanting to fit in. Isn't that like an egoic aspect? Because I kind of feel like, personally, I don't think I'm walking on anybody's toes or anything like that, but I clearly don't want to fit in. I just want to do me, and it doesn't matter what anybody else think. I'm gonna show up as me every day, relentlessly. So is that aspect like an ego thing? Either way, like what are your thoughts?
I understand the perspective. I understand the some refer to it as black sheep, the lone wolf. I understand the perspective, but I've also walked that path and I understand the detriments in it.
Right.
Because something that I've noticed is the longer we remain isolated, the weaker our tolerance to socialize becomes. So you will find people that isolate themselves end up like, oh, this thing is pissing me off with this person, or this thing rubbing me the wrong way, or I can't take this person, or and and we need to have the tolerance in order to maintain our sanity, because everything around we can eventually trigger. This was my experience at least, and several persons that I've encountered and conversed with. Everything around us tends to trigger us. What I found is a more useful perspective is understanding that understanding and accepting that we need what I think they call it a crowd, or anyway, but we need social interaction, but the type of social interaction that does not help us along the path to our higher self is not worth it. So while we might not have the desire to fit in with the persons that we perceive to be going in a different direction, if we come in contact with like minds and those that are on the same journey, we find that our perspective on social acceptance and so on tends to change, because instinctually below the conscious level we are all human creatures. We all have the need for social acceptance, and denying it, I believe that denying that part is suppressing a part of yourself, and what we suppress usually tends to pop up in different areas.
Yeah.
So I found the smartest way of dealing with it is acknowledging it, but understand why it is that we tend to shy away from certain types of interaction. It's
Hmm.
not that I don't necessarily like socializing, it's just that I don't like to socialize and talk about things that seem pointless, or I don't like to socialize with
Yeah.
crew, with the type of people that are heading in a different direction and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that really answered the question there. A question that I'm super excited to ask is about the intuition versus the ego. Like sometimes we get like something is going on. something is happening in a situation, and then like you can be like, I know exactly what I have to do here. Like a thought just dropped into your mind about what is the next step that I need to take. And sometimes you have to wonder, is that like your intuition or that's the ego? How do you differentiate between the two, like intuition, and how do you know, like on a personal level? Because we all get thoughts back and forth, good and bad, all the time. So how do you know what feeling do you get, or what are the key indicators that this is my ego and this is my intuition?
Okay, for me, or to me, what intuition is? Intuition is, so there's the unconscious aspects of self that is way more knowledgeable, way more perceptive, way more resilient than our conscious selves could ever be aware of. And examples of this is the fact that during hypnotherapy, you can tell someone to heal a infection or heal a gun. You can give the unconscious part of them the instruction to heal this part of them, and the unconscious part of them understands the assignment and exactly how to execute it.
Yes.
Something that we have no idea how this is done. So it's obvious that the unconscious part of us is way more wiser than we could ever be. So
Yeah.
what I see intuition as is our unconscious self kind of bleeding over into our conscious perceptions.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, but there's also the, as I said, duality exists within everything.
Yeah.
There's also the issue of unconscious traumas bleeding over into our conscious perceptions. So while we can use the knowledge and the wisdom of the unconscious side of us to make brilliant decisions that we don't even begin to understand how the part of us knows that that would have been the right choice. There's also the possibility of us making wrong decisions based on intuition. If our unconscious side is traumatized, or if there's a lot of traumatic unconscious pressure present, or in other words, a lot of traumas present in our unconscious, then what bleeds over is fears, is insecurity, and we tend to
Wow.
make decisions based on them. So healing the unconscious is access to intuition. At least that's
Yeah.
what I have found. The more our unconscious is healed, the more reliable our intuition becomes. But there's still a process of transitioning from a traumatic um, unconscious to a healthy unconscious, because our conscious mind still has the pattern of being afraid or reading the wrong type of message, even though our unconscious
Yeah.
might be in recovery. So the first step for me in getting in touch with the intuitive side of us is healing our unconscious content, so that the it's a pure, I guess, there's less interference, I would say.
It's so, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm remembering, and I can agree with every single drop of it, because during hypnotherapy, what you're saying is absolutely correct, and I have the evidence to prove it. Because during hypnotherapy, that intelligence that is within us comes true, the intelligence for us to heal ourselves and everything. I speak to the subconscious, and I was about to say a few times, but no, almost on every single occasion, that aspect of the self says, I tried to talk to this. I've been telling them this all the time, but they never listen. And when the
Those are
instruction, yeah. And when the instruction is given to heal, it has to heal. It heals that whatever the issue is, wherever the problem is, it heals it. So we do have that intelligence. And Louise Hay spoke about that in her book, You Can Heal Your Life. All from reprogramming that subconscious. And I feel like another thing you mentioned about the subconscious, well, I'm saying subconscious, but you were saying the unconscious. I'm hoping it's the same thing. Is it the same thing?
Yeah, it's essentially the same thing.
Okay,
The
great.
concept is just a layer deeper, but there's some interchanging.
Yeah, below the conscious. Yeah. So, yeah. So I feel like when that is flooded with fear and insecurity from earlier programming, it's challenging, like you said, to hear that because, and I'm now processing this because I'm thinking some people, it's easier for the healing process, sometimes just one session and they're good. And maybe for other people, it need a couple sessions, 2 sessions, 3 sessions to help them with the entire healing process. So yeah, I really like that perspective. So you have to, if I'm correct, what you said, you have to heal the unconscious part of yourself, the part, and Carl Jung spoke about this. Making the
Yeah.
unconscious conscious before you could make any progress.